Because true prevention is really digging. You really dig into somebody. You dig into inflammation, how to detoxify, their hormone balance, their oxygenation. You dig into all those concepts. Because if you can correct those concepts, you can prevent somebody from getting sick.
Everybody, welcome to the Old Fashioned Health Show. I'm your host, Jazz. We got a treat for you guys today. We have a best-selling author, physician, international lecturer, of course. We have her. She's also a professor here at Emory University. She's a mother of two and also a wife. No, I'm not talking about somebody with multiple personalities. I'm talking about Dr. Jazz.
Thank you so much.
You must tell us when you noticed that health became a passion of yours.
I think health has always been a passion, but the reasons have changed and the motivations have changed. I mean, when we can go back, I don't know how far back you want to go. But
Let's go back as far as you're comfortable with.
All right, so if you want to go back, I think it honestly started very simply. You know, I'm of Indian descent, and one of the first trips I took with my parents was to India. And I was a little bit appalled with the poverty there and kind of the state of children's health there. And that it was considered normal to have like a kid walking around the street with a broken arm, or I don't know, just stuff you don't see here.
Right.
So I was 10, and I said that when I grow up, I'm going to be a pediatrician. And you know, I started studying through college, thought about lots of different careers along the way, kind of veered off that course in different ways and in different forms, and you know, ended up back with I either was going to do journalism or I was going to do medicine, and I chose medicine. And the only reason I really chose medicine is I wanted to take care of kids, and that was the bottom line, and that was my reason back then.
Wow.
So I made it through med school, made it through residency, was motivated by taking care of kids, and you know, did all of that, came back to Atlanta to work, and started working in the emergency room.
And Emory?
No, I actually started with CHOA, Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, and their system, and promptly got recruited out of their system to work for another community ER, Wellstar. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them or not, but I got recruited to work in their ERs. But the difference there is that's not a children's hospital. You know, you see adult and kids there. So I had to get comfortable seeing adults just as much as I saw children, you know. So the motivation there changed. So I went from I'm going to take care of kids, I'm going to do a bunch of stuff for kids, to I'm now in the emergency room, and I'm fascinated by all the different things I'm seeing and all the different problems that come in. And as you work in the emergency room for a long period of time, you realize how kind of broken our healthcare system is.
So that was part of the motivation.
Exactly, because you see everybody. Kind of at the same time, my own health was taking the nosedive. And so I was then trying to figure out what was going on with me, and sort of in the search for that, got into the field of integrative and holistic medicine, and just started studying.
With so many aspects of your life, being an author, being a mom, being a lecturer, how do you find time to keep yourself healthy?
Well, I mean, I try to make it a priority, but I am. I mean, food I'm meticulous about. I think food fuels me, it sustains me. I notice too when I step off sort of what my diet should be, then that's when I don't feel as good, I don't have the energy that I normally have, I can't think as clearly. So that's probably my number one. My number two is exercise. And then there's a lot of other things I do that I take advantage of. I'm a trained acupuncturist, so I'll do acupuncture on myself. You know, I'll get a massage.
What you trained at?
I have this desire to learn everything, but then anyhow, so I'll do acupuncture on myself, I'll get a massage every now and then.
You do it yourself? You can do that yourself?
I can do acupuncture on myself. I know it freaks out my family, but I do they'll walk in and they'll see this whole face full of needles, but anyhow, so those are some of my tricks. You know, the food first, food more than anything else.
So what kind of diet do you have? What do you try to keep up with?
Well, what I try to keep up with, I am gluten-free. That's a lot of my health story. That a lot of my hormone issues and other things that I was having through residency were tied back into having issues with gluten, which then affected my thyroid, which then affected other things. So when I travel, I try to carry stuff. Like I'll carry a lot of protein bars with me. I'll only pick snacks like at the airport that fit that sort of gluten-free piece. I'm trying to stay away from a lot of the packaged and processed foods that you try to grab for. I traveled yesterday, for example, and I make it, I mean, this is terrible, but if I can't find something or I don't have something on me, I just don't eat, honestly. I'll just, because for me, it's just not worth it. I just feel worse, honestly, when I eat something that I can't tolerate. And almost, I would rather take that feeling of hunger over that feeling, overtake that feeling of, you know, of eating something and then paying for it for 2 more hours, you know. So that's kind of my strategy.
Good strategy. So here at Old Fashioned Health, we kind of focus on the mental, nutritional, and physical aspect of health. And I noticed your center here in Atlanta, the Atlanta Center for Holistic and Integrative Medicine, encompasses all three. Can you talk about your center as well?
Sure. So the center was started with, just the passion to help people, honestly. I never intended for it to be as big as it is or to be as busy as I am. I thought, hey, one day a week, I've studied all this stuff, like you pointed out. Like maybe my husband actually, he was like, maybe you should share this with other people instead of just, talking about it and training yourself. So we started very small, very tiny, with the intention to just kind of share what I know, and the demand was there, and we grew and grew and grew. We continue to grow and get bigger. So in the center, the way we really work, we don't reject conventional medicine. There's some patients that'll come in and they think I want nothing to do with conventional medicine. That's not true. We don't reject it. It's just that we have sort of expanded the conversation to include all these different modalities, from Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine, nutritional medicine, functional medicine, and really combining them and putting them all together and telling a patient, well, you have this, but before we get to a medication or a surgery or a procedure, there's all this other stuff to do. And if it doesn't work, and if it fails, then yes, we need to move on to conventional medicine. Exactly, you take those steps. Like Dr. Weil, who I trained with, his classic line was, when you're in an accident, you want to be in a level 3 trauma center with the best technology around you and the best surgeons, the best doctors. But when you are in a more preventive mode or you have a chronic illness, you want other stuff. You don't need medications and surgeries. You really want to know how to fix it. So the center takes that into account. It combines all these different modalities together. We have good representation from all the different aspects of medicine. And then what we do for every person that walks through the door, we really try to individualize their treatment. So for you, acupuncture may be helpful, but for somebody else, it's not a good fit. They need to focus more on food or on their hormones or something else.
So it's where it's specified for that person. What kind of other services and programs do you offer? Because I was on your website today and yesterday, and I saw a lot of things that you offered.
We have a lot going on, and we hope to offer more, honestly. But the core, if we took everything away, the core is that doctor-patient relationship. That's the core. That interaction, that relationship, that visit determines the tone of everything else that happens afterwards. So it's the medical services that I think are at the root of the center. And then after that, we offer stuff. We offer acupuncture, we offer nutrition counseling. We have an Ayurvedic person there who does marma therapy as well. We bring in from the outside people to do thermograms or carotid ultrasounds.
You got a one-stop shop.
We're trying to create that is our goal, to create a one-stop shop, to create a medical home.
How many other health professionals do you have working at the center?
Well, what a great question, as we're in the midst of growth. So up until about a year ago, it was just me. But we have been kind of in active recruitment mode. So we have just, we have 2 doctors that have just joined the practice that we're super excited about. And then we have a wonderful nurse practitioner who is just a go-getter, and I think it breathes a lot of fresh air into the practice as well. And then as soon as we kind of get that model set and ready to go, then we're ready to get bigger and hire more people, because there's so many good docs out there who are passionate about integrative medicine and passionate about helping people get better by just expanding that to their life.
A lot of good information on your blog. So what can you tell the people, what can I expect to find on your blog?
Well, there are 2 sites. There's the center site, which is very center-focused. It talks about all the different services, the programs, all that other stuff we have going on. But that's also an educational site, because we do put sort of up-to-date research articles, that type of thing that are relevant. The Dr. Taz site, which is what you're referring to, is a little bit different. So it has more of my own personal flavor to it. And on that blog, we'll tackle different issues every week. And again, that same theme. How do you tackle any given problem, whether it's acne, aging, you can't sleep at night, you can't go to the bathroom regularly. How do you tackle those by expanding your toolbox? So really that entire site is focused on that, and really educating people and serving as a resource for that type of information.
So on that website, you put together a newsletter.
Yes.
How often do you put that newsletter together?
It's every other week.
There's good information on it.
There's a lot of great information on it. I've got a great helper with that too. I have to give some credit to, but it is every other week, and we try to put that together. And again, it's just another tool to kind of get the word out there, to talk about, at the end of the day, why are we doing this? I always sit back too and try to look at this, like, why are we doing this? Why are we spinning our wheels? Why are we, putting this much effort? I hate to say this, but at the end of the day, I think that we're trying to be a resource for people in this country who are struggling with their health, and we're trying to change medicine. And I know that sounds ambitious, but it's got to start somewhere. And it's got to become a groundswell movement.
Many options out there, not just the
correct, exactly.
People are brainwashed a lot, especially when they're kids. Take medicine, take that.
Well, it's culture. It's a part of our culture, I mean, and you can see the generational shifts too with patients. Like, your older patients are used to just taking a medication. The younger ones are coming in now, like do I have other options? What are my other options?
Okay.
So you're seeing sort of the shift
Right.
culturally.
A lot of people don't want to take pills. I know my friends, they don't want to take pills, medication every day.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons why they look for a holistic.
Exactly, and they worry about the side effects, especially now that we have all the ads on TV and you have the disclaimers right after that. It's a great medicine, however, you may die, be blind, everyone's like, wait a minute, is there another option? So I feel like the pharmaceutical industry in a way has kind of, hurt themselves to a certain extent.
Actually, our book of the month for August, we read a book every month for mental health, and our book of the month for August we just finished up was Water Cures Drug Skill. And one of your articles said that to reduce your risk of cancer, and they had to deal with just drinking water. So can you go into that a little bit?
Well, I think the bottom line with cancer, when I talk to patients about cancer and they come to me worried about cancer and they've been newly diagnosed with cancer, there are a couple of main concepts that get people in trouble. One of them is being very acidic, having sort of an acidic body, and having a body very low in oxygen. I'm not just talking about oxygen that you breathe, but even at a cellular level, the oxygen content is low. And the reason for that is often a poor diet, contaminated water, because the water currently that we're all drinking is more acidic, it's not alkaline. And so when you're talking about body pH, because we know cancer cells can't really thrive and grow in an alkaline environment, then that's when we know that the type of water that you're drinking is so hugely important, and drinking alkaline water plays a role in that. Now some people take that conversation even further. I was in New York yesterday and a woman was talking to me about ionized water and water that's gone through a reverse osmosis system. The more we learn about how these things kind of at a molecular level really affect us, then we will all start to change what we're doing. But for right now, the most I could say is, if your water is more alkaline, it is helpful. It is one of the factors in keeping your body pH where it needs to be to prevent cancer.
So if I go into the store, how do I know what kind of water, what's the best water for me to get? Obviously not tap water.
Right.
So I might be able to go up the spring or something like that. What should I look for?
So we usually say look for distilled water.
Okay.
Usually spring water is better.
Okay.
Obviously you don't want any well water sources or those type of things, but that's usually a good starting point.
Okay, good stuff. Yeah, this book says something similar to that as far as drinking water can help you with simple things as far as back problems, back pain, osteoporosis. Before people want to go and get drugs, just drink some water.
Well, hydration.
Exactly, hydration.
Again, it's that stress connection where you get to the mind-body piece. Like a lot of us when we're stressed, you can go an entire day without drinking a sip of water. And then that's the muscle cramping, urinary tract infections for women, headaches for young kids. I mean, it's all of that. So I agree. I'm always thinking about it kind of, what's the one thing that I would focus on? The bottom line for me is when you drink water that's contaminated, I worry about the cancer piece, so, so that's another part of the story.
So all water is not created equal?
All water is not equal. Believe it or not.
Okay. So I want to get into something that's very, dear to your heart right now, this moment. You have a new book coming out.
Yes, I do.
You have it coming out September 23rd?
September 23rd is the 21-day belly fix. We are super excited about it. We are hoping that everyone will pick up a copy and give it to somebody that they really love and care about and change their health. It's changed my husband's health, and for one reason, if nothing else happens with the book, it changed his health. So I consider it a success.
That's a success right there.
Success, right? Probably.
So what separates your book from all the other books that are out there right now?
Yeah, that's a great question because, even when you go out there and go to the health section, you see all these books. Well, try this diet, try this, do that. So the bottom line with this book, this is a gut book. It's a belly book. It's about the entire fact that changing your gut flora, the bacteria that live in your belly, how your belly breaks stuff down, what your belly lining looks like, is the secret to health. It's the secret to your digestive health, that's obvious, but it's also the secret to weight and weight loss. It's kind of the secret to hormone balance.
Secret all right here.
It's all right here, and it's not really a secret because Ayurvedic, Chinese medicine, those guys, those are 3,000 and 4,000-year-old systems of medicine. They talked about that all those years ago, and somewhere in our journey of medicine, we lost that conversation completely. So it's a gut book, focused on shifting health. Kind of our motto is you have to fix your belly to find your health. You can, again, even from a holistic standpoint, I can give you a supplement for your headache, I can give you a supplement for your back pain, but if all of that's coming from your gut, I'm doing the exact same thing that's been done in conventional medicine, where you get a medication for this and you get a medication for that, you don't get to the root of the issue. And the root for many people, 9 times out of 10, is in their belly.
Wow. Can this book pretty much give a good person a starting point to a long-term health?
Yes, that's exactly what it can do. If you are lost, because what you'll see in the news is that every week there's a new study. Gut health is linked to this, gut health is linked to that, but you don't know what to do with it. Again, I was talking to people yesterday and they were telling me, yeah, I like all those, healthy gut foods, but I don't know what to do with them. I don't know how to prepare them. I don't know how to make them. Like, what do you do with kefir, for God's sake? So anyhow, so there's a lot of confusion. For those of us that are educated and we live and breathe this stuff, it's easy for us. But for everybody else, it's like a big, black hole. They don't know what to do. So in the book, there's a well-defined plan that walks everybody through steps, and those steps are all thought out. There's a reason for every step in the plan to help them reset their gut health. So the first few days of the plan are all about cleaning stuff out. The next few days are about sort of eliminating some of the toxic foods and kind of building flora or building bacteria and kind of getting all of that balance.
Building the system back up.
Building that system back up and building it back up in the right way. And then the last kind of week or so is about bringing in some foods that we consider as potential allergens and seeing how your body does with that. So it's a quick test for you. Do you tolerate gluten? Do you tolerate dairy? Do you tolerate corn? Without having to do all the testing and things that we normally have to do for that.
Oh, so you can do it all yourself.
You can do it all yourself through the book. And then the book really makes an attempt to incorporate remedies from Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine. So we use their recipes, we use their secrets in this plan, hoping to really reset gut health. And the stories are amazing. We've had some testers and they've done really, really well. And I'm so encouraged by them. They've kind of given me the motivation and the steam, like, oh my gosh, this story really needs to be told, So I'm super excited about it.
And so you had a previous bestseller before this.
Correct.
Called What Do Doctors Eat?
Right.
So where did that come from, and what do doctors eat?
Well, so a lot of times when I go around and speaking about health and nutrition, a lot of people will tell me, well, my doctor, kind of slept into the exam room, overweight with a cup of coffee in her hand. You can see the donut wrapper in her office. Doctors don't know how to eat. They don't know nothing. They know nothing about nutrition. So that was the whole premise. Like, wait a minute, some of the leading doctors in the country know a lot about nutrition, and we're happy to share it. So that was the premise. Like, here's what some of your top doctors across the country. I mean, I'm not the only voice in there. You got, you got Andy Weil in there. You got Deepak Chopra, I think, is in there. You got a ton of great doctors. Travis Stork is in there. You've got these recognizable names in there. And as you comb through their diets, we're not all that different. Some of us are gluten-free, some of us are not, some of us are vegetarian, some are not. But in general, everybody who's very health conscious is following kind of a semi-vegetarian, anti-inflammatory, Mediterranean-style diet. That was sort of the general rule. So what we could do is take everyone's recipes and, again, come up with a good diet plan that if people followed, they would feel great and, again, lose some weight.
Wow. During this time of the year, we have kids going back to school. So one of the problems that parents have is trying to give their kids, proper food to eat in their lunchbox. So what do you think that, parents come up against the wall? What are some mistakes that you think that they make?
Well, I mean, first of all, funny that you say that because we're doing a whole seminar on lunchbox, snacks and nutrition coming up at Whole Foods on September the 13th. But the biggest challenge, and I'm a mom, I have a 6-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I think I've fallen into this as well. I mean, the biggest challenge is what are these guys going to eat for snack or for lunch? So many times I've packed these beautiful snacks and lunches and everything would come right back and you're like, oh my gosh, I spent an hour on this for nothing. So, there's trying to please these little guys, but then there's also there's also the attempt of being nutritious. And then, most kids are nut free, so most schools have outlawed nuts. So one of your great protein sources is automatically off the table. So I think for moms, kind of my general rule is have one fruit, something crunchy, and then maybe something soft and chewy, and that kind of encompasses everything. But then pick foods within those textures that you think your kids will like that are healthy. So for the crunchy snacks, they could do things like nut thins, which my children love, and they'll, have, periodically throughout the week. We do a lot of protein bars. I'll send those to hold their energy stable, as the day goes on, because sometimes they don't make it to lunch or they have after-school activities. So again, it's trying to be, looking at protein content, looking at sugar, looking at texture. I think texture is huge for kids, and we always forget to talk about it. But a kid or a child will not eat something if they think the texture is not quite what they want it to be.
Just the texture, not the taste.
Not the taste. They're more kind of turned off by the texture of things.
Oh, really?
So that's why I'm always like, well, let's do something crunchy, and then we'll do something soft, and then we'll make sure we have at least one fruit in here, and then we'll add up the total sugar grams to make sure we don't exceed this amount of sugar in their lunch or their snack. So that's kind of my goal, and that's what we're trying to teach people to do as well.
So what do you think some foods that are masquerading as healthy snacks that
are absolutely?
I mean, I have personally, I know like fruit snacks are not
Fruits, all of that, you know, which we call them, probably, you know,
I mean,
masqueraders
I would
of
say
healthy
masqueraders
food. Yeah,
of
masqueraders
you
of
know.
healthy foods. I mean, the fruit snacks, the yogurts with 20 grams of sugar in
Sugar.
them, you know, so, I mean, I'm sitting there looking at this going, okay, this has 20 grams of sugar, you're done, you know, mom's
Yeah, for the day,
guideline,
yes,
you're pretty
that's
much
25,
done.
okay.
Exactly, we usually say around 30 grams, try not to go over that. You do that one yogurt for them, which is healthy, and then they're done. Some of the
Yeah.
protein bars you have to be careful about.
Exactly.
There's a ton of additives in them, so I'm very particular about which ones I use and which ones. So there are tons. I mean, I think it's hard as a consumer to sort of sort through that information. You almost have to become kind of an expert at label reading
Yeah.
and, you know, make sure you're doing your math at every meal and every snack to make sure they're getting what they need.
Do you find it hard to teach your own kids to eat healthy?
Absolutely. It's always a challenge because I have my ideas and my values,
Right.
and then they have their friends, you know, and their nannies, and, you know, other caregivers, their grandmothers. Let's not forget the grandmothers. I don't know how many times, you know, they've gone to, you know, one of our mom's house and, oh, you know, no gluten in that. No, there's no gluten. I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
it
yeah.
says wheat, you know. So, but anyhow, so yes, it's very hard to get everybody on board, to get everybody on the same page. But the
Right.
key I've learned is you've got to educate the kids. If you can help them make that connection between I ate sugar, I feel horrible, or I ate gluten, my stomach is hurting, then they self-regulate. So my son, for example, he will say like, Mom, does that have gluten in it? And I'm like, it does, sweetie. Do you?
How old is your son?
He's 5.
He's saying this.
He's saying that. He will ask me, Mommy, does that have gluten in it? I'm like, yes, it does. He's like, nah, it's okay, I don't want it. So
Wow.
he'll turn down the cupcakes at a birthday party, you know, that type of thing.
Okay.
Same thing with my daughter, Mom, this is my 2nd serving of sugar today. Is this okay?
Oh, you're
I'm
teaching
like,
them good.
yeah, so right, I taught them to do, like, we had this whole game that we used to play, we've gotten out of the habit, actually I need to bring it back, but it was called Sugar Dollars. And they would get like, you know, a certain number of sugar dollars that they could use every day.
Right.
They could either save them for the end of the week, and at the end of the week they can get like one big treat that they really wanted all week long, or they could use them all week long. So, for example,
What do they do most of the time?
most of the time they use them on the same day.
Okay.
Saving is still not in our vernacular right now, but anyhow, so like they would, like 2 cookies would be a sugar dollar. So
Okay.
that was their quota for the day, then they're done, you know. So it was interesting, you know, to kind of play some of these games with them and educate them. That's the key. Use whatever you can to educate them.
Games,
To
make it
really,
fun.
games, you know, working in a garden, cooking. They help me a lot at home with cooking, and so, you know, tasting healthy food and knowing the difference, all of those things help in trying to change their palate and help them to make healthy choices.
So I want to take a break right here for any questions in the audience that you have for Dr. Tabs. I know you have some.
For someone who's totally uneducated when it comes to eating healthy, and you do get bombarded with all this stuff that's saying this is good, this is not, blah, 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 in particular gluten-free, which I didn't recommend it to start gluten-free, right? What's the first thing to look for? What is the major things you need to look for in terms of just starting?
Just starting? So are you talking about gluten in particular, or just anytime I hand out?
Gluten in particular, but you can expand if you want.
So gluten you have to learn the gluten grains. The easiest way to start by being gluten-free is just get rid of all sort of your carbohydrate foods. Really, that's the easiest way to start. So you really go to a plant-based diet where most of your carbohydrates are coming from plant-based foods, from vegetables, from fruits. You do small servings of protein, and then your carbohydrate load is almost like dessert, you know, and then when you pick that carbohydrate load, trying to figure out what grain it's coming from. So the gluten grains, remember, are going to be wheat, spelt, rye, barley, and oat. It's usually those 5. So you want to pick things that don't have those particular grains in them. Now, the advantage of today versus 10 years ago even is that there's so many gluten-free options, right? I think restaurants have them. You know, everywhere you go, there are gluten-free options. The danger of that, though, is a lot of those gluten-free options, whether it's gluten-free pizza or donuts or whatever it is, are loaded with sugar and fat, so you have to be a little bit careful. And they're loaded also with lower quality flours. So just because you switch out your pizza crust for a gluten-free pizza crust still does not mean you're being healthy. You know, it just means that, hey, every now and then you can have pizza instead of completely depriving yourself. So you have to be careful. So the healthiest gluten-free person is typically on a very plant-based diet, a few complex carbs, and then some protein to kind of nourish and balance insulin throughout the day. You know what a great place for you to start would be to look at some of the paleo literature, some of the paleo books out there, because they are basically gluten-free, but they incorporate, the only problem with them is it's a lot of meat, which some people don't tolerate real well, but they do really work hard on eliminating that carb load and focusing on plant-based foods, protein, and equal amounts throughout the day.
A question about you said the alkalized water. that's better for you.
Mhm.
Because I know when you drink water or anything like that, inside your stomach the pH is about 1 to 2, and that's more acidic.
Mhm. Correct.
So I know we have buffers in there that keep it at that pH.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of confused on how the water being alkaline is better for you, because no matter what, it's going to be buffered to that pH between 1 and 2.
So that's where your stomach acid
Mhm.
is in that acidic range between 1 and 2, but your body pH should
Mhm.
not be that low. Okay, your body should be more alkaline. So stomach acid is there for a reason, to break down food, to balance digestion, to do all that stuff. But it should still maintain an alkaline pH overall. Okay, so every time you test your saliva or every time you test your urine, hopefully you would be in the right range, you know? What alkaline water will do is help to reset that pH balance. So no matter what you drink, you're correct. Your stomach acid is always going to be acidic. You're not trying to correct stomach acid by drinking alkaline water. You're trying to correct body pH so that the whole thing balances out. So a lot of things that we do today make our body pH very acidic. For example, coffee, sugar, sodas, stress, all of that shifts the body towards a more acidic state. That's what you're trying to move that balance away from.
Okay. Have a follow-up question?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So I know, I understand that, because I know once it, at a certain pH, it does pass through to the small intestines, where it's a pH of about 6 to 7.
Correct.
And I know most of the water absorption happens in the colon, the large intestine. I'm just kind of having trouble, since there's no absorption of water, I'm guessing in the stomach, it happens in the small intestines and in the colon, where it's at that alkalized pH already.
But it's not. That's where you're missing the link. So not for everybody. With the way our current diets are,
Mhm.
and with the way we currently live, when you transition, from the stomach to the small intestine, you're supposed to be at an alkaline pH. The majority of people are not. And one of the biggest gut health issues that we've come across, which we talk about in the book, is SIBO, or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, where because of the bacterial environment there, people are shifting now there. They're acidic there, they're acidic when they get to the colon, they're acidic all the way through.
So it's more of the gut flora that's changing the pH,
Correct.
and not really the gastrin or CCK or anything like that. That's usually
Correct. Well, gut flora is key, and that's what this book talks
Okay.
about. So things like alkaline water, changing your diet, all of that
Mhm.
stuff helps. Those are all factors in helping that whole balance, because again, what happens when you drop your pH, even in the small intestine? You encourage an environment of bacterial overgrowth.
Yeah.
So that's where all of these factors start to play together. So you're correct in theory. In theory, what's supposed to happen, you're acidic in the stomach, you slowly become more alkaline as you transition through. But what's truly happening in reality, that's not that's not the case. People are acidic all the way through because of diet, because of food, because of lifestyle, because of all these other things that we're trying to explore nowadays. I mean, people have blamed everything from, even from vaccines to environmental toxins, but something is happening where we as a nation, we're not doing that anymore. That's not happening anymore. And that's why you're seeing the level of disease and the body burden of disease that you're seeing today. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm glad that you're addressing the gut, because my daughter was diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
How does that play a part in what you're addressing in the book?
We talk so much about irritable bowel or IBS in the book. We talk a ton about it because I feel like it's a big struggle for so many people, and they don't really understand why it's happening, what are the reasons, what are all the different factors involved. Now remember, IBS is again, we call it a diagnosis of exclusion in medicine, where you want to rule out all the scary stuff first before you're going to tell somebody that they've got IBS. At the end of the day though, when we look at IBS, conventionally we don't have a good answer. It's everything from stress, it's everything from, maybe you're not emptying completely, or you have an emptying issue, or you lack digestive enzymes. I mean, there are all these different explanations for it. But for the patient, it doesn't really give them a whole lot of relief. So in the book, what we do, again, IBS connects back up to that theory of gut flora and balancing it. That theory of gut flora, though, is then in turn connected to the foods you're eating. So a lot of times there's a food that triggers IBS, that you don't digest it well, it alters the flora, it alters the pH. Or it's connected back up to stress, because remember, 95% of our neurotransmitters are made in our bellies. They're not made in our brain, and people always forget that. Most of them are made here. So if you are highly stressed, that whole population changes here, and then that continues that cycle of IBS. So we do talk a lot about it. It's a very important concept for American health. We see it a lot. And again, there are a lot of different factors in play, but we think the root is back to gut flora is off. Why is gut flora off? Let's figure that out.
So what is the difference between drinking filtered water versus alkaline water?
All right, so in alkaline water, it's been specifically treated to have a higher pH, okay, typically a pH over 7. In filtered water, no one's worried about the pH. All they're doing is filtering out, maybe chemicals, heavy metals, that type of thing. All right, so it depends on the filter that you get and what that filter claims to do, but that's the difference.
Is it still good for you to filter?
Absolutely, absolutely. And alkaline water is debated, honestly. I get asked that question all the time. There's so many companies that, are selling alkaline water and making it a business. And for me, again, it's sure, it can't hurt. It's one more helpful step when we're trying to create or fix this problem of acidity. Is it going to solve the problem? I'm not 100% convinced. It may help, it should help, but I don't think it's going to solve it. What's going to solve it is fixing your gut health. It's fixing that transition he was talking about as you go from stomach to small intestine to large intestine, and making sure all the players there are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Questions?
I have one. Do you have a certain approach for when you're working with older patients who are dependent on medication, but a diet plan can really help improve their condition?
So patients that come, realize we see a spectrum of patients. We see everybody who just wants to look better and feel better to people that are truly sick, and they're very sick, and they've been everywhere too. They've been to Mayo, they've been to Hopkins, they've been all over the place, and then they end up at the practice. So when I'm dealing with somebody older who's coming in with a long list of medications, we have to be super, super careful, because oftentimes whatever illness or ailment they have, it's been there for a while. It's not that it's been there just for a couple months and I can turn it around real quickly. So usually we leave their medication list alone. We work harder on some of these concepts like gut health, nutritional support, making sure they're getting the right number of calories, making sure they're not losing muscle mass, those type of things. And lifestyle, mind-body type things too, because a lot of older people are isolated or living on their own or don't have a lot of support. So we work really hard there and don't do a whole lot with their medications because they're sicker usually. They've had issues for a much longer period of time. So I'm not comfortable having an older person walk in and say, okay, we're gonna get rid of your blood pressure medication and this medication. We don't do that. Now, if they turn around over the course of time and we start seeing improvements and we see numbers correct on lab work, then yeah, we'll work with them and say, okay, well maybe we can start to lower the cholesterol drug. You might not need as much because your GI system has been corrected. And because your GI system is corrected, your blood pressure numbers look a lot better, so we can correct that. And then the other thing that's happened so many times to me is my thyroid patients that are older, as they get on the right plan, we will find that they suddenly become hyperthyroid because that thyroid dose is too much for them now, so we start to lower that. So that's the way we'll work with them, but it's slow, it's deliberate, it's well thought out. It's not done like, oh, all medications are bad, you need to come off all this stuff. We never do that.
Thank you.
So before we end, I want to ask you, what is one or two main things that people get confused about health that you wish people knew more of? Or
I don't think people understand still how powerful food is. How food really is your medicine, how every choice you make in terms of what you eat determines your health. I don't think they still get how powerfully strong that is. And I think if they did, then you would question every time you sat down to eat, every time you had a snack. I think that's the first thing that I see over and over again. I also think that people are still not proactive enough about their health. I think people still come to the doctor when they're sick. They don't go to the doctor when they're well. And I think we need to change that mindset. And, we see the language for it with Obamacare and things like that, or the Affordable Care Act. I think that's the more appropriate. But we see the language for it. However, it's still not, to me, true prevention, because true prevention is really digging. You really dig into somebody. You dig into inflammation, how to detoxify, their hormone balance, their oxygenation. You dig into all those concepts. Because if you can correct those concepts, you can prevent somebody from getting sick. So I think it's those two areas that I feel like people still don't have a good handle on. Food being your medicine, and prevention is more than just colonoscopies and cholesterol and pap smears and all that other good stuff.
I want to thank you so much for being on the show. Quickly tell the people, what's your schedule like in the next couple of weeks? Where can we find you?
My schedule in the next few weeks, I just take it day by day. I'm not really sure where I am.
You're not sure where you're going to be?
No, I mean, it's a little hectic, but I'm here, obviously I'm in the practice, and I'm there, that's where I spend the majority of my time still. We do have a lot of media and travel coming up, this month and even next month.
Okay.
We have a big tour in Canada where we're talking about gut health again. So there's a lot
Nice.
going on. So I'm all over the place, but still very firmly rooted in Atlanta and rooted in the practice.
And you can find you at drtaz.com as well.
Correct.
And what is the Atlanta Center?
It's the Atlanta Center for Holistic and Integrative Medicine. The website is atlantaholisticmedicine.com.
Awesome, awesome. Before we leave, I want to give you a present. So our last show we had, I think I talked to you about this earlier, the Marquetti brand of olive oils.
Yes.
We did a show on these olive oils and balsamic vinegars come straight from Italy. It is the real deal. A lot of olive oils we get in the stores are pretty much fake olive oils, extra virgin olive oils. This comes straight from Italy. They have pasta, olive oil, and balsamic vinegar, and it's called Marquetti. So I want to give this to you.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you. Wonderful. I appreciate it.
Of course, of course. Again, this is Jazz for Old Fashioned Health. I want to thank you all so much for coming out. We have shows pretty much every Thursday. Just look for the flyers and look for the emails coming out. And we hope to see you again. And this is Jazz for Old Fashioned Health.
Prevention is
Until
really
next time.
digging. You really dig into balance, their oxygenation. You dig into all those concepts because if you can correct those concepts, you can prevent somebody from getting sick.